Welcome, everyone. Here we are to talk about Battlestar Galactica. Last month was its 20th anniversary, so we're here to chat about that milestone and the mini series that started it all. I am joined by Justin Balger, Samantha Cacho, and Norhal. I'm sorry if I butcher your last name, Norhal Collier.
There you go.
Awesome. All right. So how are you doing tonight, guys?
Doing good.
Okay.
I'm doing good.
Okay. All right.
Excellent. Yes.
We're
I
all
hope
doing very
everybody's
politely.
warm.
Yeah. I wish it was a little warmer here too. We've had a big dump of snow up in Ontario, Canada recently. So as I'm sure you guys have had as well. I thought, we'll just start off first with talking about how we got into this show, how we first heard about Battlestar and what kept us going into it. Nor, I'm gonna throw it to you first because you're coming into this a bit more with a bit more of a unique perspective than Justin, Sam, and I, because you recently got into the show just like 2 or 3 years ago, I think, right?
Yes, that's right. Actually, it was November. Yeah, I think it was December of 2020. Pandemic, trying to be entertained while we were locked out. And especially it was after The Mandalorian season 2, where Katie Sackhoff portrayed Bo-Katan, Chris, and like Ricky said, "Oh no, you're falling down the Katie Sackhoff rabbit hole." Yeah, what about you should watch Battlestar Galactica? And other friends were like, "Yeah, have you seen her in Battlestar Galactica?" And it's like, no, I haven't." So I said, "Yeah, let me check it out." And I was, wow, obviously like almost 20 years later, but yeah, 17 to be honest. But it was so good. And
Mhm.
I was it was a great experience. And that's of course not while it was on its highest at the highest, but I think it was a great experience to start with, and especially by hearing all the good feedback from people like, "Oh, you're gonna love it, you're gonna like it, it's great." So yeah, I just started like 3 years ago, so yeah,
Yeah,
it's been good.
awesome. Yeah, that Katie Sackhoff. It's a shame her career has not been big. Like after Battlestar, just haven't seen her in much. It's like she's in a galaxy far, far away. So,
Yes.
so all right. So, Justin, how about you? How'd you first get into Battlestar?
One night, literally, I think the week of the premiere on the Sci-Fi Channel back in 2005. I was bored. I had absolutely nothing to do, so I ran out to get some really bad fast food, and there was a Best Buy across the street from where I got the fast food. And I went in to get like whatever crappy DVD I could find, and instead I found a really good DVD. So the miniseries apparently had released on DVD not too long before the series premiered. So
Mhm.
I was like, I'm kind of familiar with the IP, even though I didn't really watch it, but it was legit enough that I felt, hey, I could probably enjoy this. And it
Mhm.
absolutely blew me away. This is now Norhal's like 3 years ago, and I'm like, this is back like in 2005, it's almost 20 years ago.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so I missed it when it originally aired on Sci-Fi, even though I'd seen like commercials because I watched that channel religiously. And then so right after the miniseries, I watched it again the next day, but with commentary because I love
Oh,
commentary
nice.
tracks, and
Yeah, yeah.
Ronald D.
Mhm.
Moore is amazing. And then
Mhm.
the next week, I picked up the series, and that was it. And yeah, love the show, favorite ever.
Yeah, awesome. And Sam, how about you?
I didn't get into it immediately. I came home from winter break my sophomore year of college from Emerson College in Boston. I came home and during the break between like, I think Pegasus and Resurrection Ship Part One, they were doing a
Nice.
marathon. And my
Hmm.
dad, was like, "Oh, you need to watch this." And so I
Hmm.
ended up taping like a lot of those episodes on VHS and like
Oh,
catching up to I mean, and that's such a high point of the series. And
Yeah.
so I think, and so it's like I was able to then watch those two episodes, kind of knowing what had happened in season two,
Yeah.
and then going through season two.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember when I caught up with it, but it just happened to be one of the big things that was like a kicker with being like, oh, this show is like really special, is I
Mhm.
was applying to UGA. I was wanting to transfer from Emerson, just getting a little homesick and wanting to get into journalism from theater. And UGA hands out the Peabody Awards, and they had just given Battlestar Galactica a Peabody Award. And also that year, Trey Parker and Matt Stone got one for South Park. And when they went up
Mhm.
on stage, they literally used their time to thank Battlestar Galactica. And I just
Awesome.
thought, wow, this is a big deal. And that just kind of added to it. And so I kind of just kept going from there. I
Mhm.
bought the DVDs and then I kind of caught up fully. Um, and just kept going until it ended.
Nice. Yeah, I like you guys, I didn't start right away. Like I vaguely remembered seeing ads for the miniseries back in, like uh December 2003, but like I didn't catch it then, and it wasn't until a couple years later, one of my friends was like swearing to me and like our kind of group about this show of like, oh, you guys will love it. And I'd seen a little bit here and there of the original series, just mostly coming home from school. And Justin, you're talking about sci-fi, and like they had a great block starting from like 3 p.m. onward of like Star Trek original, TNG, DS9 and Voyager, or maybe like another TNG in there. So like it was a great 4 hour block of Star Trek. But like right before that Star Trek was usually the tail end of an original Battlestar. So like I would maybe catch a little bit of that, but like I never like caught on to that really. Um so yeah, my friend, he's swearing about this one, and he had gotten like the first season on DVD, and one night like he brought the miniseries over and we watched it, and like I was blown away at how good the miniseries was, because like I was expecting something similar to what I'd seen from the original series, but instead it's this like serious space opera drama that's like all like already in the miniseries is so heavy with its themes and like such awesome acting from everybody that the next day like he like it was the summer, so we weren't going to school, so the next day he like came back and like we all got together and like binged like I don't know 5 or 6 episodes right then, and yeah, caught up then. At that point, I think season two was fully done, but they had only released like the first half of it on DVD. And so a little while later, we watched the first half of season two, and then we had to wait a while until like to watch season 2.5 when it came out on
Mhm.
DVD. And then from that point, we were week to week, like just keeping up with season three until the very end of the series.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
funny to
how
me
I
that
got
you
into it.
mentioned it's funny to me that you mentioned Star Trek. That's a big part of it for me back when it, I guess, originally aired the series, not the
Mhm.
miniseries, because like I
Yeah.
said, I missed it. But like at that time, it was Enterprise, which was kind of in the midst of like the third
Yeah.
season to fourth
Hmm.
season turnaround, but it
Yeah.
hadn't
Yeah.
quite figured itself out. And you were at like the end of the Berman era, so I love Star Trek, but a lot of it, once you've seen 100 or so episodes, a lot of the rest of it is very derivative or similar to what
Hmm.
you've seen. And then the philosophy of Trek at the time was not like kind of a serialized Discovery, Strange New Worlds
Mm.
now, but very just old school like TOS TNG. So
Hmm.
Galactica at the time felt like this crazy breath of fresh air. It
Yeah.
was everything that a lot of things are now, but before someone else had done it, or at least
Yeah.
done it in a mainstream kind of like direct way. And it completely changed one, the kind of sci-fi I guess everyone was watching at that time, but I remember it was really cool in those early days to catch on before everyone had caught on
Yeah,
and kind of
Hmm.
be the person cheerleading the show.
yeah, yeah. Because it wasn't until like about season three, I guess, like once we finally caught up, that like it seemed like more people were talking about it then, and stuff. So I was glad to catch on at that point, just because like the popularity had been growing so much. And then to your point, Justin, about like making that Star Trek connection, like once I found out this show was the brainchild of Ronald D. Moore, who, you
Hmm.
know, spearheaded a lot of TNG, and then of course DS9, which is kind like, as much as I love the original and TNG, I think DS9 might be like my favorite
That's
of
because
it.
that's because it's the best.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, so hearing like once I made the connection that like, oh, Ronald D. Moore, DS9, he's doing Battlestar. Oh God, no wonder I love this. Like, once I made that connection, like it just made the show 10 times better.
Yeah. Another thing I really liked about it then was it was by the time I found it, 4 years removed from 9/11. But as
Mm,
cliche as it sounds now in interviews to hear people talk about, and we were just coming out of 9/11, and so here comes the show. But
mm.
it's true.
Yeah.
You know, you're
Yeah,
still
Yes.
dealing with a lot of latent feelings that you don't necessarily talk to your friends and
yeah,
family about because it's hard to
yeah.
actually express them. And then you watch a show, you're already kind of geared towards sci-fi fantasy type stuff, and
Hmm.
they're saying all of these things that you're feeling and then putting them, or rather couching them in the real world, just
Yeah.
kind of set in space. And again, it all sounds really basic and like, well, duh, that's a sci-fi show. But it was just everything they were dealing with at the time, the way they were writing all of these human
Mhm.
beings, and the fact that it felt, at least to me, like for the first time watching a show like this, that I was watching real humans that felt
Hmm.
just fallible to the point of being understandable and more relatable.
Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, cast to the nines in terms of
Yeah.
performance, because that's something too where I think if you want to go in for that kind of very hokey cliche, and that's fine. But when I rewatched the miniseries again and I'm looking at the casting and I'm just thinking, I mean, they got for your two leads, two Oscar nominees.
Yeah.
Edward James
That's
Olmos for
huge.
Stand and Deliver, and then Mary McDonnell for what two
Uh,
times I think, and then just
yeah.
building this supporting cast with people who had done quite a bit. I was a big fan of Jamie Bamber because of Horatio Hornblower, so I was
Hmm.
super
Oh.
excited to see. I was like, "It's Mr. Kennedy," and then I'd never
Yeah.
seen Katie Sackhoff ever, and she's the only actress ever that I've cut my hair to kind of do the Starbuck at the end of season
Wow.
two. The only
Yeah.
person I've done that for. But yeah, and then just written, um, as Justin is saying, in such a manner with these people that um, are fallible. Nothing feels affected, and it's just
Mhm.
I rewatching it again. I mean, time has passed, but at the same time, I was thinking, dang, this looks really good for like watching it on my DVD, like putting a
Yeah.
DVD into the Blu-ray player and thinking that, damn, okay, this still holds up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
No,
a
Yeah.
for sure.
testament. And the fact that sci-fi, really had the cojones to like to green light it, I mean, I do think back then it takes balls to do that
Hmm.
because I mean, you did
Yes.
have like The Sopranos and West Wing and other things, but to let genre kind of speak for itself that way.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's uh crap, what was I gonna say? But it's like what you're saying of just how serious this was, and like compared to the original series, which
Mhm.
was like in comparison very light, very cheesy, very fun, and
What was the Star
that
Wars cash grab back then?
yeah.
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 And then to take that and be like, no, let's twist it into something that's gonna resonate in a post 9/11 world, and make it much more like gritty and realistic. Like that was definitely like such a huge risk. Like even though Battlestar didn't end up having like kind of the same longevity as Star Trek and Star Wars. Like like that one season and then its sequel. were still pretty popular, like obviously. But to still should change it so drastically, that was a huge move, but like paid off so well.
How
Yeah,
dare
and that
they
was
make Boomer and Starbuck women? How dare?
Yeah.
yes, yes. I have when I was talking about it, like, yeah, I'm watching Battlestar Galactica, and some people was like, oh yeah, I remember the classic, and oh, I love it. It's like, oh, okay, there's the classic. So I went like again,
Mhm.
but I haven't watched that yet. But I read about that they changed for both Boomer and Star Wars. So like,
Yeah.
well, that's I don't know. Maybe back in the years when it was released, might have been a shock for the fans of the
Yeah,
classic.
Katie
Uh,
Sackhoff
they
has
were
a
mad.
Katie Sackhoff has a funny story about it of meeting the original Starbuck actor, and they did like
Oh,
a sci-fi promo, and she said like, oh yeah, it was really nice meeting him, but then like a week or two later he wrote an op-ed titled The Castration of Starbuck.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah,
wow.
and I have
Wow.
not seen him since.
Oops.
So yeah, so it's like, huh, well, uh, yeah, like as far as I know, Starbuck is a cigar smoking, charismatic, don't give an F individual, and that's kind of what we got on the show as well. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and well, I'm not familiar with the storyline of the classic, but I think by doing that, it brought up some other like what I've been watching the storylines for both characters
Mhm.
brought on other challenges. I mean, for example, with Starbuck and her love triangle with Apollo and with Anders, and obviously having her story with Zach. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it brings another type of challenges that you might not have with the original character.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember, and it's been ages since I've seen some of the original episodes, who the women were in the original. I keep wanting to say like Wilma from Buck Rogers, and I'm like, wrong show.
I only two come to mind. You've got
I'm like, I can't think of who.
Jane Seymour was Athena, I think, and then
Okay.
there was one more, but I remember the actress was Laurette Sprang, and she was like Starbucks on and off again girlfriend, but I can't
Okay.
remember any other primary characters that were back then.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is very 70s. So,
Yeah, because I mean, it's like you had Lauren Green, and then you had, Richard Hatch, and um, yeah, but I was just like trying to rack my brain right now, and I'm like, who is it? I can't think.
yeah.
And it's so populated in the new show by having just, I mean, what there's in the opening credits, who do they list? They list Mary McDonnell, Katie Sackhoff, Trisha Helfer, and Grace
Trisha
Park.
Helfer, Grace Park, yeah.
yeah,
And
Um,
then
and then who they kept adding and adding and
yeah,
adding,
yeah. Because
or bringing in.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, yeah, that because then like you also have Alosha, who's
Mhm.
plays a pretty big supporting role in
have Lucy, you have
yeah. And then
Of course, I know I know
yeah,
Justin.
D. Oh yeah, you have D
Yeah.
And
No, I was
Callie,
gonna say
Callie.
and
I know
Callie.
Justin and I have
That's
talked
who I was just
about
trying to think
D
of. I
yeah.
was like,
before.
oh my God, what's her name? What's her name? Callie. That's right.
Callie, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And they
yeah,
ended up
no.
writing so much more for her. But even in that original miniseries, I was like, wow, she was given a lot to
Mhm.
do.
Yeah,
I was just
yeah,
thinking,
for such a small role, like yeah, at least
mhm,
in the miniseries, because like there's that scene of her like after they have to like close off part of the ship, and like a number of the
yes,
recruits die, and
yeah,
you see her just huddling like
yes,
the dead body of like like and like the person that you see, it's not just a like no name, red shirt, because he's
right,
earlier in the miniseries, he's the guy who like hands Adama the photo of him
yes,
and
Oh, Prasna.
Zach and Lee. So like you're already connected to this guy in a way, and then like he dies like an hour and a half into it.
That
So
was
it's
one of
like,
the sorry. That was one of the best parts of the show, like watching it from beginning to end, is it
mhm,
feels like I was never on set. I don't know anything like this, but it just felt like character actor's kind of biggest opportunity. Like all you had to
mhm,
do is show up and put in like really good work and show that you believed in the story enough to put the story up on the screen, and they
mhm.
would keep writing more for you. Like I do know one of the stories is for oh my gosh, I can't remember her name right now, but the one who did play Callie, who also,
Oh
if you
yeah,
look
Nikki
the
Klein. Yeah,
Nikki
yeah.
Klein,
Nikki, yeah.
she married Allison Mack from Smallville and was
Yeah.
involved in all of the cult stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, um,
That's a different
but
podcast.
it's a
Yeah.
way different podcast. But there's the part where at the end she's helping and Chief Tyrrell tells her it's good to be small. And if you listen to the commentary, they say that's when they realized they could use her more. And you've
Mhm.
got Tomo Pinnekit, who just from one heroic shot as he's being
Yeah.
left behind on Caprica turns into like, I mean, arguably the most morally upright character in the entire
Yeah.
show.
Like,
But that
And
kind of stuff
vital
just kept happening.
storyline in
yeah.
some
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
ways.
I cannot believe like because like I didn't hear about that until like I don't know, well into watching season one or maybe finishing season one that Hilo was originally like supposed to never be heard from again after the miniseries.
Oh.
Yeah, because like he was supposed to just be like left on Caprica, and it's this tragic downer but yet like heroic sacrifice end for him, and that was it. But then all of a sudden in season one he's like back in
Mhm.
there, and you're following along his story, and it's like, how different would Battlestar have been without him? Because
Yep.
Yeah.
exactly like what you said, Sam, he becomes such a, and you said too, Justin, he becomes such a vital moral character that like I think like after Adama, he's probably the most moral one of the bunch.
I mean, sometimes before Adama, he's
Oh
the
Yeah.
yeah,
most
yeah.
morally
He's
Hmm.
like
viable one of the
Yeah.
bunch.
mhm.
Yeah. So it's crazy that something like that can so fundamentally alter a show.
Mhm.
But
Phenomenal actor as well. I think that was the
Oh
first
yeah.
thing I ever saw
yeah,
him in. And I know he popped out and stuff
yeah,
later, like Dollhouse and on
yeah.
various other
So,
things, but I
yeah,
had not seen him. And I was like, who is this?
yeah.
Like
So a bit of a funny thing, like Battlestar is filmed in or was filmed in Vancouver.
I knew you
Um,
were gonna say.
well, the funny thing
Knew
is
it.
that Tom and Peckett, the first thing I saw him in, he guest starred in an episode of Smallville, where he
Oh,
also
right.
had a fairly large guest role in that episode. So when I saw him in Battlestar, I was like, oh hey, it's that guy from Smallville in that episode. But then also because it's Vancouver, there are so many local Vancouver actors who pop into this show and were guest starred in Smallville, and
Yeah.
then even before that, they guest star in X-Files. And
Yeah.
so it's so
Oh.
fun to be like, hey, it's that guy in that X-Files episode, or that guy in that Smallville episode. Like the list of Battlestar actors who appear in Smallville, like you have Hilo D. Actually, Hilo twice. He guest stars later in the series as like a totally different character. And then Tyrell also twice. You get Doc Hoddle,
Crash down.
Crashdown.
Yes,
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
down.
he's has a major role in Smallville
Yeah.
later on, and Loach. So many of
Alicia,
the
yep.
yeah, so many of the Battlestar people can be seen in Smallville. So it's just always hilarious to me when I see a Vancouver actor or like just pop up in something. It's like, oh, yep, I know where you came from.
That's how I feel with Georgia now because of how big it's become here. I feel like kind of like Vancouver in that aspect. And it's
Yeah,
so there's that person on The Vampire Diaries or The Walking Dead or
yeah,
whatnot. But then even then going back to Battlestar, with how many names that they got on there too, even for like small little things,
hmm,
bringing like Michelle Forbes.
Forbes.
Yeah,
yes.
or
Oh,
bringing in why am I blanking? I always just call him Brother Cavill.
oh yeah,
Oh, Dean
Dean
Stockwell.
Brother
Thank
Dean.
you,
Cavill. Yeah.
Dean Stockwell.
Yeah,
Or even like James Remar, for like what, 3 episodes or something. Like I think that's
Yeah.
the first thing I weirdly saw James Remar in. And then it's just afterwards it was like, holy crud, this guy has done a lot
Hmm.
of stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course just making people names.
Yeah.
Like with Katie, and then kind of going on seeing other people pop up elsewhere. Trisha
Yeah. Yeah.
Helfer,
Trisha
James Callis had
Helfand.
done quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I was
but
just
astonishing.
recently I was recently watching the morning show and like, oh, that's Kate the Ellen Tig, and it's Kate Vernon showed, and like,
Oh,
oh,
Yes.
her
yeah.
character's like, oh, that's Ellen Tig. So
Yeah. I remember watching a CSI episode, which funny enough, like was about like some big like producer turning some like old cheesy show into like a gritty remake, and Kate Vernon was a guest star in that. But it's also like there's a bit of it that's a clear play on like some of the controversy about the Battlestar remake, because like this guy, he shows off the trailer for this like gritty Star Trek reboot, and it's like violent and gory. Someone gets shot in the head and whatever. And then a fan stands up after the trailer and he's like, "You suck." The guy who yelled "You suck" is Ronald D. Moore.
That's
oh
funny.
no.
So it's like that very nice CSI. I like the little Easter egg you threw in there. Very nice.
Yeah.
There's
Now
some
talking about
character actors who do such a good job in this show that you hate them every time you see them somewhere else now. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's that guy. And like,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Same one of those good examples actually is Calum Keith
Callum
Yeah,
Keith
Kellen
Reddy, I
Yes.
Reese.
was going to say him. I
Yeah,
just call him
like
yeah.
Leoben. Most of these
yeah,
actors, I
Leoben.
call them
Oh
by their
yes.
Battlestar
yeah.
names.
Like it was after this show that I started noticing him much more in other things, and like just either little bit parts or guest roles or like significant roles, but I was just like, oh yeah, it's Leoben,
Is he in
that
Memento? Am I
SOB.
making that up?
Yes, he's in Memento. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
And
been so long. And
yeah,
I just
and
started to have that thought. Oh
yeah,
God, he's so good. I've
yeah.
done one of his monologues before for like an
Nice.
audition.
Yeah.
I've done Starbucks, Zach failed basic flight monologue. Like I've done a lot of them.
Nice. Yeah. One thing I remember from Leoben as well, I didn't click it until a while, but he was also in the Butterfly Effect. That's the first thing that I
Oh my
ever saw him
gosh.
in, because
Oh,
he's
that's
Ashton
true.
Kutcher's father.
Oh,
So
nice.
like
Is he old enough to be Ashton Kutcher's father?
well, in the
Or is
Butterfly
it like
Effects,
flashbacks? I have not
yeah,
It's
seen
a
that
yeah,
movie.
flashback. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
because like when
Yeah.
he's a kid, he goes to see his dad, and then like he has a blackout and his dad is strangling him,
Oh geez.
and it's like later revealed that like his the power that he has to jump at different points in time like is genetic and came from his
Yeah.
dad, and so he
Okay.
it was a really good scene with him in it. And so well, like when you see the full scene of it later on when he tries to go to his dad for answers, it's a really good scene with him, but it didn't click with that was the first thing I saw him in until much later, because I was like, oh yeah, Battlestar, this guy is like with the first thing this is the first thing I saw this guy in. But and he's so good, like that like in the miniseries, that whole bit with him and Adama, and they're trapped, and like you're thinking that this guy's going to be like I don't know, like the Han Solo of the show, the charming rogue who is just like kind of out for himself, and maybe he'll grow a little heart of gold. But no, then it's like, oh no,
It's a
he's a
silent.
Cylon, he's a bad guy. So I really liked that diversion, and he's just so good when he has that conversation with Adama leading up to the reveal. He's so good.
They did this really cool thing in the miniseries too, where after he's revealed as a Cylon, they play around with the way the camera moves with him. And they don't show you him like moving in super fast robot motion, but the
Mhm.
camera quick cuts to him standing up, but then he's already up and like in Adama's face or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was really creepy and in a way that I thought made the Cylons look artificial. And I kind of wish they had kept that sometimes because
Mhm.
I like where we went, but something about them not being quite right and using that against you, I thought was really cool.
Mhm.
I just rewatched the miniseries and I'm like, I'm remembering now what you're saying, Justin. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that whole point where they go to that station.
Mhm.
And it was like, oh yeah, this is like a really big moment because it allows, Adama to be separated for that bit and to
Mhm.
introduce another person, another Cylon into the mix. Um, here's a fun thing. I showed in one of my college classes, the scene where number 6 breaks the baby's neck.
Mm.
And I think
Yeah.
this was in one of my film and media classes and showing this idea of kind of like taking this idea of what femininity is and just with 6 and what she looks like and what she's doing in this moment for her is this act of mercy, this very twisted act of mercy for this baby. And I remember showing the class and I think they were so horrified with it. But as we just were discussing, earlier, kind of this post 9/11, very realistic, dramatic, not camp feel and how it just permeates throughout
Mhm.
everything through the series.
Yeah, like if anything prepared me for what this series was going to be, it would be the baby murder thing.
Oh, that starts it. It absolutely does.
Yes.
And
it's just
in
like,
her mind,
oh
it's like
wow.
I mean, it's just what
Yeah.
she thinks. She's
Yeah.
showing
I
mercy.
and one of the funny things is like I've read a theory that like that she didn't mean to do it either because it's like, oh, when you look at her walk away, she looks like, upset and sorrowful, and that's why she's leaving so quickly but so
I
because
think
like
she
she
means
she
it.
says she says that line that's like it's
Yeah.
amazing how like it
How
supports the
fragile
head.
their necks
Yeah,
are.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
but
just
yeah,
think
I definitely lean more towards what you said, Sam, that like she did it as a mercy.
I mean, she's feeling so much that just wasn't expected, and whether it's
Hmm.
through Baltar or through everything that is about to happen. And I think that's her kind of, to me, that's that first moment for her that's really showing there's something different with her. And what Trisha Helfer does is like really nuanced and amazing throughout this
Yeah.
show with all of these different versions. I
Yeah.
can't imagine
Oh
how
yes.
difficult that was, the
Yeah.
original 6 versus like head 6 and then bringing in like Gina and Natalie and all of these different people. And I think that would have been, I don't know, maybe a little alienating filming, especially
Hmm.
since, for certain scenes, it's like they can't see you there, and so
Yeah, yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're there with the cast, just
right, but
none of them
not.
can look at you or
Yeah.
acknowledge you're there.
Yeah.
Right. But I think, it starts with her, in that first opening scene, where
Hmm.
she just walks in at that
Hmm.
station and are you alive? And you go from there.
Hmm.
And she's that through line starting with that to the baby scene to, the explosion to kind of everything going. I know the mini series ends with the boomer reveal, of course,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what you said of Trisha, like it it's so cool what she does, like how she's able to differentiate herself from like all the different six for even in the first season when um there's that six copy that comes and tries to
mhm,
like frame Baltar, and it's just like
right.
that's like the first moment you really notice like okay, like here she's acting like not completely different because she still tries to like that like seductive tendency of like where she tries to seduce Adama and stuff like that's a very like kind of Baltar's version of six, but that's still the moment where you're like, okay, she can like play in a much larger field, and then you get to the one like even the one on Caprica who's like following Hilo around, like how different
Hmm.
she is compared to those two, and yeah, it's just crazy of like the what she's capable of.
Hardware is identical, but the software is different.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
There
Well,
you go.
it's actually funny because rewatching the series, like all the Cylons are pretty much like every copy is pretty much like the same like base copy, but
Yeah.
it's always the sixes who express much more individuality, especially like in personality and even like physical look, because they're like one of the only ones who like dye their hair a different color or cut it to a different length and wear these different clothes and stuff. Like it's always interesting to see how the different numbers like portray themselves.
Hmm.
And she's like, for some reason the sixes are just much more accepting of individuality, which is ironic.
There's
Yeah.
that great joke in the plan, actually, where Cavill, they're having that secret Cylon meeting and he's calling them out because,
Yeah.
like, the Dorals are all wearing that same leisure suit, but the sixes
Yes.
all look different. He's like, why don't you
Yeah.
differentiate the way you dress? Look at her and look at you. And he's like, this suit is blue. That one is red. And he's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. So yeah, one of the um moments that I that jumped out at me, and it's like one of the very first scenes too, is that like opening walk through the Galactica, like starting with
Mm.
Starbuck, running through like everybody, and then like you just kind of it goes from character to character, and like you follow her for a bit, you meet Adama, then they split up, you follow Adama, and you meet all these other characters, and just like I even remember the first time I watched it, just like that, like kind of it's a one take. I'm sure there were like little tricks to hide cuts and stuff, but
Yeah.
like that one take still just blew me away, because not only do you get some really good introductions to like who the characters are and even the history, because like you have that copy of Doral who's talking about the Galactica, like it's an ancient relic, and the war is such a bygone era and stuff, and but then like all these cool little intros to the characters of Starbuck running, Adama running his lines, and you get like that little shot of Ty like sneaking in his morning drink and all that, like right up to the CIC, which is that is such a cool set, because
Hmm.
coming off of like watching like so much Star Trek, where they have like the bridge command and stuff,
Mhm.
like it's like, oh, like, yeah, the bridge is going, yeah, it's a sci-fi show, they might like model itself off of Star Trek, the Enterprise. No, like like one of my friend, like actually the same friend who got us into the show, he when he was kind of describing it to us, he said like, imagine the only thing left in the military is like an old World War II battleship, and which is what the Galactica is, and just the way that CIC is designed, like it's so cool and impressive, just the scale of the sets and everything. Like I found that a really cool way to open it. Just like you get your own tour through the Galactica, and you see the like how great the sets are among all these like character interactions.
yeah, but I love that they center it all on the humanity of everyone too, because it's
Mhm.
everything that you just said. It's not just going through like with a camera, but you see those little slice of life things from everybody that make it feel lived in, but like you should care about the locations that you're seeing because these people do.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think it's doing a lot of showing. It's a lot of the times a
yeah.
film show, don't tell. And it's just like what Justin said, you're going through and you're getting those moments. So you see Starbucks, she's running, she's doing her thing. What do you hear? Nothing but the rain. Adama's going through his notes, which of course he ends up, that's one of my favorite things at the end, is that he
Mhm.
discards what he says. And then I love it later in
Mhm.
season 2 when Sharon, Athena Sharon, brings it up, and
Mhm.
because he's just that I have that I like had to save that speech later.
Mhm.
If humanity needs to survive or deserves to survive, maybe you don't.
Mhm.
But to just going through to seeing D and like Gata, Alessandro Giuliani is
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
To Colonel Ty with his cup, it's a really great introduction to everything.
Mhm.
And rewatching it, I didn't realize how long it was actually. I mean, it takes its
Yeah.
time, and I thought,
Yeah, it
whoa, okay,
it
this has been a
really
minute.
builds up to it,
Hmm.
and yeah, like to your point about that speech, like that's one of my favorite moments of the series, and that's like also where the miniseries kind of like plants its flag of like this is what we're about. This is going to be our main like thesis for the show of what makes us worthy of survival. And Edward James Olmos, he's been to Toronto a couple times at the Fan Expo convention. So um I got to like ask him the first time I saw him to get him to sign our cast photo. Um, it was like it was in between season 4 part 1 and season 4 part 2, and like we asked him like, we know you probably can't say anything, but like what's your thought, what are your thoughts on the final episodes, like what can we expect? And like he like put down his pen and looked us in the eye and was like, it is the best thing I've ever filmed in my career. It's
Wow.
going to be very exciting for you guys to see. And then when I saw him again a few years ago, I asked him like, what was his like favorite theme of the show? Like, was it like the examining the father and son relationships with him and Apollo, or like the power balances in the fleet and stuff, or and he said that his favorite one is actually from that speech of what makes us worthy of survival. That's his like, he loved everything in the show, everything that they examined, but that one through line from the pilot to the finale is his favorite thing, which is just like, yeah, like everything.
That's why you get him to be that actor to do it.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, that's
And
yeah.
and that's
So
one of the things that so far, I mean, I know I'm not done yet with it, but I feel like that theme is recurrent through the seasons to say it's okay, we're going through this survival in this fight against the silence, but at the same time is how are we coping with it, and how are we dealing, and you see all this struggle of power struggles with Sarek and with Gaius Baltar. It's like, yeah, there's not like 100% good way to handle things, but yeah, maybe like things could get worse, like what they did in New Caprica. So it's, yeah, I think it's a very good point that Edward made.
yeah, as someone who started watching the show for Katie Sackhoff, which cast member like jumped out for you and has kind of like become your favorite or second favorite after Katie?
yeah, because the Starbuck guy is my favorite, but well, I love Apollo. I mean, it's a conflicted character, and also I have a love-hate relationship with Gaius Baltar, because sometimes I love him, and sometimes like, oh my.
Yeah.
But he's so good. I mean,
Baltar is a really good like villain to like, or not, or like not even anti-hero. Like
yeah, no, I'm like a
he's so hard to
conflicted.
classify because he's not an outright villain, but he's not outright good. And
he's human. He's human.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to say it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in the miniseries, he has that moment where he sees the other woman's number, and because the woman doesn't have her glasses, and he could outright do it, and he doesn't. And by going up with her, Hilo's like, wait, aren't you this person? And he's very much, he can be slimy, and he can be selfish and just really cowardly, but he's so engaging with what he does. And I do think there is humanity in him, and I think that's what makes him so attractive to Six as well. I think that's something that she sees, and that's something she wants to. And so of course she's going to be attracted to this man who probably wants to relay that he's anything but, and of course he is, and you see him racked with guilt and shame. And James
Yeah.
Callis is a phenomenal actor, and
He's
it's so
so
funny.
good.
He can do this and then be like in Bridget Jones and just be
I think like, when I was watching
the
this,
complete
like,
opposite.
oh, this guy, oh my god, that's Joe's friend. Oh my god, but
Yes.
yeah,
Like
great
fight,
job.
fight, and then he does this.
Uh,
But I feel like the fleet was so lucky to have both Adama and Roslin as their
Yeah.
leaders, talking about this line of humanity and the importance of it. And just these are two people who I think believe in not just the survival of humanity, just for humanity's sake, but
Yeah.
believe in the power of people and what they can do and what we are capable of. And
Yeah.
that is from the get-go with the two of them.
Yeah.
In their scenes individually and then together, because it's a little rough for them at the get-go, and they
Yeah.
realize we want the same thing. Why are we doing this? And
Yeah, Rosalind is so good, and Mary McDonnell, like, just from like throughout the series, just such a phenomenal job. Like from the first moment that you see her in the mini series, when like she's sitting in the doctor's office, and then like
yeah,
you don't even hear what the doctor says. Like he starts, but then
yes,
like it drowns
right,
out, and then it just cuts to her reaction in like a
yes,
washroom, and she just breaks down. Like that is so good. And even though like you didn't hear what the doctor said, it's like just you can tell what it probably was that he was talking about, like with the cancer thing, like her cancer diagnosis, that like that was it. And just from the way she broke down. Then I love that moment with Billy where she's like, I have cancer, and um like it's so like selfish that like the world is falling apart around us, and all I can think of is I have cancer and I'm not going to live for 6 more months or whatever. Like it's such a
Again,
powerful moment.
that again to me is the strength of the show. Like I'm not kidding when I say that this show for me is life changing. It is my absolute favorite show ever because of the humanity baked into it.
Mhm.
Um, they gave every person in the show like something that made them, I think, uniquely human, but at the same time made them every human.
Yeah.
I love with what you're talking about with Rosalind. I've always taken it in the mini that they telegraph her journey, like her complete where she is at the beginning to where she ends up in that scene, because the doctor
Mhm.
comes back, he says words to the effect of like it's malignant or the mass
yeah,
is something something,
Mhm.
and then just like you
Mhm.
said, they start cutting out the dialogue and they cut to her face. My take on that is Mary McDonnell, excuse me, is not she's not playing like, oh no, I have cancer and I'm sorry for myself.
Mhm.
He always looks to me like, oh God, I don't want to deal with this right now. And because you said it, now I have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I can't deal with it in front of you because I don't know you. I need a place that I can't be around anyone. And it always felt like her day because I took it that she went from there to Galactica. She
Yeah.
receives the worst,
Yeah, it's
she receives the
like,
worst news of her life
yeah,
and
like
then has to keep it to herself.
the miniseries
Yeah.
takes place in like 2 or 3 days max. And it's like
Yes.
from the start of that, just for everybody, like she wakes up, is told she has cancer, not long to live, goes to Galactica. Baltar wakes up with six and is told he's the
Well,
reason for humanity's
not with six.
downfall. And just like it's like
it's like
that.
doing each person has to do that next right
Yeah,
step.
and like and Apollo is like reuniting with his father, which is the last thing he wants to do. Like everybody starts off having like the worst day, which then just gets worse and worse after the bombs come. And it's so like just it is very human, like what you said. Like it makes all their struggles like relatable, and then their reactions like even more like relatable and realistic, because like it, you have cancer, the world is falling apart around you. It's not going to be shocking to be like to have that just the only thought in your head.
Like
And
And
also your
that's the kind
president.
of
Have fun.
yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's
Jessica, what
the
are you gonna
kind of
say?
that's the kind of hope that I love about the show is we all seem to agree that like this is everyone's worst day. The day of the mini series is everyone's worst day. But then you could also say it's their best day. Every single one of these characters makes a
Mhm.
decision or a series of decisions that essentially allows humanity to survive. And like
Yeah.
it begins the show, but
Yeah.
without these people actually, pushing forward as we all have to in
Yeah.
life, none of this happens and everyone dies.
Yeah. It's
I love how you say that because some of those decisions, I know the big one that I think of is when Ty and has to make the decision to, kind of
yes.
close the gates. And then, of course,
Yeah.
so that the fire doesn't spread. And Colonel Ty is one of the very few characters that I've done like a 180 on, where I could not stand him at the
Yeah.
beginning. And then season 3 came along and I was like, he and Cersei Lannister, the two characters that I just, once they got into different material, I was like, what have I not seen this whole time? But he makes that decision, and the chief is just like 40 seconds, 40 seconds.
Mhm.
And Adama's like, I would have done the same. They're making
Yeah.
these decisions, or like in 33 with the Olympic carrier, and Starbuck is like, Lee, no. And I can't
Yeah.
imagine living with that, and then
Yeah.
having the military and the civilian kind of point together. There are these people that this is something they have been
Mhm.
taught to know how to do, and to have that strength of that, to also then have, from the civilian side, what they're getting and putting it together. And that's why I think it's so important with Adama and with Rosalind, because you can
Mhm.
see that, you put in like Kane later,
Yeah.
there's a lot of butting heads having that humanist factor to them, to take each worst day and to quote, like I think that's Frozen 2, the next
Mhm.
right thing, and to
Mhm.
keep going. And some of these decisions are going to feel like the absolute worst decision that they've ever made, because 85 people are killed. And we see, what was his name again, Justin, who was
Prosna?
the yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And God, and that scene's horrific. And it's funny because then later, I'm trying to think, there was later in a scene where was it in the miniseries, I guess, where it's like, or maybe in 33, where Lee ends up doing the bit with the Olympic carrier, and you view him as the hero. But it's funny, for that first bit, you kind of view Ty as being very villainous in some
Mhm.
ways. It's like, or not villainous, but just like having no sense of maybe like compassion or something. And yet they're
Yeah.
doing the same thing. And it's,
Yeah.
as time comes on, you start to see more of your characters. And
Yeah.
Ty, of course, is presented very
Yeah.
specifically at the
Well,
get-go.
like, yeah, because of how they introduced Ty and his problems, and that he's like an alcoholic and he hasn't
Mhm.
really been like serious about his role on the ship for a while. Like, I mean, all of them have been expecting, like, they've never gone into combat on Galactica for ages, and like all of them are expecting the ship to be retired and they move off to other places. And even when like Ty gets the news of the Cylon attack, he's like, "Oh no, this is a joke. They're
The
playing a
joke.
prank on you, a retirement prank." Like, and like that's part of that is just his denial of it. But it is like you said, like they build us into like kind of not liking him at first, and so then
Right.
when he does make that decision to cut off to like close the gates and cut people off, well, I think you're intentionally supposed to like side with Tyrell there and be like, oh no, like,
Yeah.
something could have been done to save them. But then it's not until Adama, like he's like, he's the XO and he made the right call. I would have done the same thing. That you're like, oh, okay, so that, like, it's not.
Yeah.
This isn't like a normal kind of TV show where it's like, oh no, he made the absolute wrong call and I'm gonna dismiss him from the bridge or something like that.
Right.
It's
Oh, and
it's
Lee.
very realistic of it.
And Lee makes the decision later. It's actually
Mhm.
when it's like, you know, they realize all the Cylons are coming and Colonial One needs to jump. And they're like, no, we need to try to
Yeah.
evacuate people. And he's like, no, we're going. And
Yeah.
and so
Hmm.
you're seeing those same kind of decisions made, but just with the way that people start, with how, they're presented. I think they did a great job with shifting everything, with
Hmm.
shifting Six, shifting Baltar. I mean, they shift Starbuck more, they shift Lee, obviously Hilo. And the writing just, it's such a banger
Yeah.
after banger. I mean, there's duds in there, but And then
Yeah.
again with the acting, very much no small parts. I
Yeah.
mean, any of those local actors getting in to do what they got to do on that show, I think that would have been such a thrill and an honor and a privilege to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Like he doesn't show up in the miniseries. Yeah, he doesn't show up for the first couple or few, but Doc Cottle is
Oh,
like
he's
one
fabulous.
of my
Oh yeah.
favorite supporting characters on the show. Like he's so good, so funny, but also like so down to earth, and like he's also quite a moral like
Yeah,
character because
Mhm.
yeah.
like one scene that always stands out is during like the Pegasus and resurrection thing, and like when um Sharon gets attacked, and then like she's
Yes.
talking with Adama and Coddle, and you know Adama kind of starts that he's like, what happened to you? But then Doc Coddle like cuts him off. He's like, should never have happened. And it's like, damn, like he's cutting off Adama there. He's serious about this. And then later in season 3, when they're on New Capricorn, he's like operating on Cylons, and Deanna makes the comment of like, "You're actually like helping them live," and he's like, "You know, patient
That's
is
his
a
job as a
patient."
doctor.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. So
And
so
Well,
he'll
what I
he's
like
smoke in front of you too.
yeah, yes,
what I like about that scene though is, and I'm a die-hard Star Trek fan, so I don't mean this as a slight against Trek, but again, at just around that time, when you see a doctor in Star Trek take a moral stand, or it was again certainly true back then, it's like the scene of the episode, you know, like I took the
hmm
Hippocratic Oath and I will do no harm, and that means these Jem'Hadar as well, and I'm
yeah,
the good guy. You know, like I think Sam was saying, the way you get that from Doc Coddles, he just goes outside after doing surgery and lights up a cigarette, and you get the information about the character, but it's just as you would a real person. You know, the person's
hmm
not going to monologue, and just again that humanity made it so much easier to access the unfolding of the story as it went along. It was
hmm
such an amazing show.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. You know, Justin, like you and I have mentioned Star Trek a few times now, and like, and just how different this is, and like, obviously, one of the big things of Star Trek is like, you can basically like for most of the series, like the various series, you can jump into like any episode without having any seen like any of the previous ones, and just go along with it and get what's going, and like by the end of the episode, everything kind of reverts back to the status quo. I know that was for Ron Moore, that was a thing that he wanted to avoid doing with DS9, and he did that really well. And he wanted to do that with Voyager as well, but wasn't successful, and that's why he kind of left. So it's such a cool thing to see on Battlestar, these relationships and these conflicts like change and grow, and you know they like what you said, Sam, that they always like shift characters into different roles and perspectives. Like you tell like the season, for example, the season 2 finale, nothing was quite as shocking as seeing Starbuck and Ty be like hi and hug each other. Yeah, so like that was the most shocking thing, like one of the most shocking things of that episode. Like they're friends. It's like what?
Oh
So
yeah, that was a
just
big thing in season
yeah.
3 when they started to become like this is something they had shared together. And I was like the considering like their first interactions, assistant essentially, I am tired. Are he they're playing, cards and she punches him and she's thrown into the brig.
Yeah.
I mean, that is their first interaction to
Yeah.
what it ends up.
Yeah. Which is also funny you mentioned that, which is also another great thing about Battlestar is just the details, because Ty has that bruise on his face for like 3 or 4 episodes once the series actually starts. Like so they made it a point to be like, okay, yeah, like 33 takes place like a few days after the miniseries, so he's gonna have that bruise. So let's go back, look at how she punched him, apply that bruise, and then like keep it for the next several episodes. And that's always such a cool thing. Whenever a character is injured in Battlestar, they make it like a plot point. Like when
Mhm.
Starbuck kind of breaks her leg and she can't fly in the asteroid mission, or like um later on in season 2 when Lee's kind of drifting through space,
Mhm.
and he's kind of still carrying trauma from that and stuff. So it's really cool how um much they paid attention to those like character details and stuff, which is um something at the time I had never seen a lot of shows do. And like now more shows are like picking up on that, like Breaking Bad, for example. They always paid attention to all those little details about character injuries and stuff like that. But for so many shows, it's like a character's injured, next episode they're fine. They're healed.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
back into their feet. Yeah.
yeah.
Nor, I'm really curious because you were watching the show during the pandemic. So, like, thinking of the earlier, I mean, that's kind of, even though it's, when it originally came out post 9/11, now, like during the pandemic, I feel like that would still feel very immediate, especially like, what is it? Episode 2 is water, and they're going through, so many
Mhm.
things in terms of like their materials and in terms of people and who's left behind and who isn't. Did that feel? I feel like it would feel kind of almost similar to those who are watching in a way, you know, like 20 years ago. I feel like that's kind of like eerie in a sense, but also all of this has happened
Mm.
before. It'll all happen again. That at that
Mhm.
time when you're watching this, we're having another moment that feels very current.
No, definitely. I agree. Of course, we were a few months in the pandemic that we were still going through uh lockdowns, quarantines, but it was, yeah, it felt eerie at some points because it felt like looking at the first months of the pandemic where like you were cleaning all your groceries and there was um
Paper,
blanket,
like toilet paper, like
toilet paper
shortages. Yes, that's what I was
shortages,
thinking.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And of course, you could see that a lot of conflicting views about it,
Yeah.
and different governments acting different. So it was kind of eerie. Like, oh, this is
Yeah.
supposed to be to have like, well, it was air post 9/11, but I felt like, yeah, in a lot of senses, the way we as humanity face challenges, it you can find parallels on that. So yeah, definitely
Yeah.
it felt like, and some of the quotes, and I remember like even like taking snapshots, and then like, because yeah, this feels really like close to home on how
Mhm.
they're facing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. I never even thought of that kind of connection before, Sam. So
Well, I just
yeah.
started thinking of it, or even now, like I think of our current world situations, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
when I was rewatching the miniseries, I was like, "Ooh, that's my tummy making noise." I'm like,
Mhm.
would we be able to kind of do what they do? What
Mhm.
Adama, I like our leadership. It's like, again, it becomes about the survival of not just their species of humanity, but of
Mhm.
people and what we are. And,
Mhm.
I think about that right now. Like, would we be able to do that? Or is it kind of like what Athena says to Adama later, do you deserve to survive? Maybe you don't. And
Mhm.
I rewatching, because I just rewatched the miniseries and I just rewatched 33. I like to think of myself as an optimist and to be somebody who would be like Rosalind. I love at the end of 33 where they mention the baby being born and it
Yes.
just
Mhm.
ends. I'm like getting emotional thinking about it. And she just smiles. And
Mhm.
that's what I would like to assume that we could move toward. But I mean, again, with how current this is, it's quite scary, and that's
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
I feel comfortable and I feel safe when I watch Adama and when I watch Rosalind and
Mm.
what Edward and Mary do.
Yeah. We've circled back to them quite a few times, and it is such a
They steer the ship. I
yeah,
mean,
like
Oh
one and
they
yeah.
two on
are
the in more than one ways. One and two
yeah.
on the cast sheet, and then as those characters.
Yeah, like they are such a good team. Like, but and like you said, Sam, like both um Edward and Mary, but like Adama and Rosalind, like they have such a good chemistry together, and they don't work like at first you didn't like they don't work exactly as like you would expect them to, just because they come on like like she's the only one at first to be like, no, we have to all stick together and we have to leave. Like the war is over.
We
Like
lost.
yeah, and like in most things you might expect like both kind of figures, maybe there will be some conflict, but both figures being like almost immediately like, yeah, we have to get everybody out here. But for Adama, he's so like stubborn at first about you know, getting back into the fight, like arming Galactica and taking the battle to the
Right.
Cylons and stuff um, and that when you hear him say to Roslin, the war hasn't begun yet in response to her, and doing a rewatch, like you flash forward to Admiral Kane and then
Mm-hmm.
to his bit and razor where he tells Lee, like, I've had thoughts of doing things to this fleet that I've stopped because like Kane never had Rosalind to lean on, or never had you to go to and stuff. So it's like that moment, and this is again about how like you know, I forget which one you mentioned it, but like how all these choices, kind of like the small ones, led to their survival. Like if Lee isn't there, if Rosalind's not there, if they actually did die in that explosion that Lee saved them from, then like it's very possible, like or not possible, likely that Adama would have gone down that path of Cain and like just been very war driven and stuff just like her.
Yeah, I think the reason that everyone who watches the show, I think, not just us, comes back to Adama and Rosalind first is like spiritual spoiler, nor I feel Battlestar Galactica in a lot of ways is about you have to get away from who you think you are or who you think you have to be to become who you actually are. And if you apply that principle to the show, Rosalind and Adama are the first two characters who, at least on just the basic level, get that, and as the
Mm-hmm.
leaders know that they have to model it to the fleet. And I think everyone else for the rest of the show, unless it needs to be a plot point, and that's a special time or a couple of special times throughout the show that it happens, but everyone else always remains like one step behind them in that journey towards like their
Mm-hmm.
better sense of self. So
Yes.
no matter where you are in the show, you can always look to them, and that's your North Star. That's the beacon that
Mm-hmm.
you're following throughout the show. So even if you've missed an episode or two, you're like, all right, I kind of know where the show is because of where these two are. And
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
so it's comfortable, to use Sam's figure of speech just now, to watch both of them because you're in this crazy situation from just a storytelling standpoint, from a growth standpoint, depending on how deep you want to get with the show. It's hard to watch sometimes. So they're extremely comforting to watch.
I
Mm-hmm.
think for them too, I think they're the first, one of the big things that I think with what Justin was saying too, put aside who you think you should be to become what you are. They continually show humility. They humble themselves. And there's a lot of Christ-like allegories in this show too, as well. And but just in general, the idea of humbleness. And with Adama, he has to set himself straight. She says, we need to leave and we need to have babies. And he's like, no. And then we have this moment, of course, where you see the show and he sees Billy and Dee, and he's like, we have to have babies. And he just realizes it. And he
Mm-hmm.
has that humility to say to her, and this is what I wish more of just anybody in any leadership roles had, the ability to humble themselves, to listen with compassion and understanding. And both Adama and Rosalind do that. And Adama takes that, he realizes, he's like, well, gosh, golly, like, shit, she's right. And they go through. And like Justin says, they kind of remain in those steps ahead. And it's not that they don't make mistakes. And there's points, of course, you know, like with the election stuff in the second season, that they definitely have their moments of what they're doing that are scary and different, but they keep coming back. And I think that's something too, that's what you want to see with kind of like your elders, your mentors, the people that come above you. You want to have that sent down to you, because so much of what we do, I feel like in our own life, is like picking up the pieces of everything that's been left prior to us. And Adama says that as well. You can't play God and then wash your hands of the things that you've made. And in that speech. And so they're constantly doing that and having to set that example. And then doing so, we are getting this as well as a viewer, and as a consumer of it.
Yeah, for sure. To that, like, to that point, just the use bringing up like so many things that Adama and Rosalind go through. Like one of my favorite moments of the series, and this is like really kind of the point that they started changing, was I think it is in the water episode where like he brings her aboard to like tour the ship, but he makes it like such a formal ceremony that she thinks he's like kind of mocking her because like she's not like, you know, the real president, like and just, yeah, she thinks based off their interactions from the miniseries that, you know, it's just like a thing in her face. But Lee's the one who's like, oh no, he hates all this formality stuff. Like he's trying to make you feel presidential. And just like little things like that again, just those character moments that build up to it, because there's that. And then like when they have that talk, like when they kind of when they meet on Kobol, and you know he says like, no, I'm alive, Lee is alive, everybody is alive because of you, because if you hadn't convinced me to help the fleet, then like I would probably be dead, and so would all of you. And you know, so it's like because of you that like we're all alive. And it's just so many good moments with them.
I'd forgotten about that. That goes back to what Justin says too. It's like he thinks that he has to do this, you know, and or even for Rosalind for some of her steps, you know, to me, she's already presidential just in how she acts as a human in terms of her actions. And it's just, there are certain, you know, formalities and whatnot that have to go through that obviously can kind of hold her down a bit, especially when you get to the election stuff later, but she shows it in her actions. And whether you get it with Lee as a pilot or a lawyer or Starbuck or Ty or Hilo, everything Hilo does. I was just could do a whole thing on Hilo as well. Or even Baltar, you know, again.
Yeah, I'm
everything that he ends up choosing to
after
do.
having seen some of the original episodes now, like I haven't even sat down to watch all of the original series, but like still caught a couple episodes or a few episodes here and there. But I'm so glad that they turned Baltar from the like mustache twirling, like actual evil kind of person into who he is in the show, where he's much more complicated and like you can never tell what he's going to do next. Like he's such a good character to watch, just because like he's so shifty, but it harkens back to like what he said to Head Six at the end of the miniseries. He's like, I'm not on anybody's side, and like he's so true to that he's always looking out for himself, even in his spiteful moments. Like it's like, no, what? How can this be better for me?
That to me goes back to what Sam said, and I didn't comment on it earlier, but I'm gonna tell you, that's a gift of a thought to have the next time I go through the series, where you said that of course that's the one that Six wants, and I'm like, well, Baltar is the most human, and there's some weird thing there between like the avatar of the Cylons who helps to destroy humanity falling for like the most human of people on the show.
Hmm.
But yeah, Baltar is a crazy character, and I won't spoil the end stuff, but I will say,
Right.
and Sam and I have talked about this before, but there Baltar has a moment in the finale that I can't get through that episode without being wrecked every time, and it's
Wow.
because he's the most human character on the show, and there's one line that he says that
Yeah.
just sums up
I,
everything in
yeah,
the past
I
4 years,
know
and
which
it's like,
line it is
damn,
because you and I have talked about it too. So yeah.
can't
Is
Yeah.
can't do
I
it.
can't remember in the original series, is he responsible for like, because you mentioned the must again, I don't even
Yeah,
know the hot
it's
minute that I had
yeah,
seen stuff.
from what I remember, it's pretty much like he's Count Baltar instead of
Oh,
like a
right, he is.
scientist.
Yeah.
And
Forgot
he
about that.
yeah, and but he does help like betray the colonies by like
Okay.
working with the Cylons, but like I think the big difference is in the original series he does it willingly, I think.
Okay.
And then
Oh.
whereas in the remake he does it unknowingly, but like even then like as Six says, like she's like you just learned that the fall of humanity is your fault, and you're already worrying about yourself because he's already like picking up the phone to call his lawyer to be like, okay, we have to like think of a defense, and
Mm.
like right before he kind of like fully grasps that oh no, like it's like all of humanity is ending right now. So
Not so different from Rosalind, though. She's like, I mean, different kind of selfish points, like, oh God, I have cancer. And then with
hmm
him, oh God, it's my fault. I need a lawyer. You know, I
yeah.
mean,
Mhm.
two very, but it's still kind of that's what you're going with. It makes me think
Mhm.
of, I don't know if anybody's seen Songbirds and Snakes, the Hunger Games prequel. And
I've
it's just
not
like,
yet, but I like I've read the
Not yet.
book, so like I know
but I feel like they do
what.
some of that stuff. Like
Yeah.
it comes across more comedic with like the Jason Schwartzman announcer character. It is
Mm.
so horrifying and yet so like funny as he's doing it. It's like I can't make dinner, you know, as these kids are like dying in the background, you know, but just these moments of seeing that peep through.
Mhm.
But I didn't even think about that, like with the two of them, and you know, he ends up becoming president for a bit. And not so different.
Which I have a funny story about that. So like I said, my friends and I were waiting for season 2.5 to come out on
Mhm.
DVD. And I like one day I went on like a movie site to see like any kind of new movie news and stuff. And you know how they have ads that play like on the homepage automatically? So this one starts playing a promo for Battlestar Season 3. And the very first thing I hear is Baltar saying, on behalf of the 12 colonies, I surrender. And I was like, oh my God. Like
What?
I closed the link. Like I closed the window. I shut my laptop down. I'm just like, I'm shook, like shaking. I'm like, no, I did not just get spot. But what did that mean? What did that mean? So when I'm doing my 2.5 marathon with my friends and the election comes up and he says that he's running against Roz, and I'm like, oh, I know where this is going now.
Oh my
Oh
God.
shit.
That was such a big deal, like in that, because I was able to, because I caught up for like resurrection ships. When you get to like lay down your burdens, part one and two,
Yeah,
when they do the year jump, I mean, that was just mentioned on like every blog, like
yeah,
ever. And then how that ended, you know, fight them until we can't. I
yeah,
feel like every, you know, best of TV
yeah.
or end of
Well,
thing
even just
that
for
I
that
read
even
mentioned
just for
that.
that transition
Yeah,
alone, like
just the head and
Baltar
then.
light like puts his
Mm.
head down on the desk, it zooms out, then it like I forget if it zooms back in on him or whatever, but like he lays his head down the desk, and then like within that scene, as the camera's pulling out, like the Colonial One changes and he changes, and it's like,
Yeah.
what the hell just happened? That was such a, there's no commercial break or no like like
Wow.
scene cut where it's like
Right.
to a different like setting and whatever, or fade to black, and like, so that, like, the transition itself is what's so shocking and jarring of it, because it's like
Yeah.
it's
And
just no warning at all.
I can just imagine, I mean, I was watching it while it was airing compared to what I've seen because
Yes.
I've been like all these episodes that I've been watching, I've been texting Ricky like with my reactions, but it is different because hey, I have season two, I finished season two, then I jumped to season three, and so on. So it's not like, oh, I have to wait until next
Mm-hmm.
season.
Yeah.
And of course, this is different in that
Yeah.
sense.
When I got my wife into the show between the wait for season 4, I think the second half of season, so 4.5, I think that's when I got her into the show. It was early on when we were dating, and I was just like talking about it, and was just like, yeah, like, no, my friends and I, we love this show. As soon as we caught up, we made it like a weekly thing to go over to one of our houses and like all watch it together and stuff. And I told her a little bit about it, and she was like, oh, yeah, I'll watch the first episode with you. And then like all of us watching that miniseries, she was hooked. She was like, this, I was expecting something much different, like something much more sci-fi, like Star Trek or whatever. I like this. So, and like, I mean, she likes sci-fi, like Star Trek and Star Wars, but like, just, Justin, I think you said it, just like how different this is compared to like the other kind of sci-fi stuff we get is it's so cool and so neat to look at.
Yeah, I remember the thing that used to help. I keep saying 20 years ago, and I feel even older than I feel most of the time. But the thing that helped a lot back then was starting with what's the episode where they do the Trillium refinery? It's not
Oh yeah,
Calamity,
the
not
asteroid one. Yeah, yeah.
Hand of God, the Hand of God.
Yes.
Starting with that episode, Ronald D. Moore actually recorded commentary for each episode, and he released them on
Mm.
sci-fi.com
I
every
forgot
Friday.
about that. Yeah, yeah.
So you could watch
Oh.
the episode and like in your post episode, like, what did I just watch? You can, if you wanted to watch the episode again with commentary, you could do it. It was the best, like, decompress, kind of come to terms with everything that you saw every time the show came on. It was great.
Oh, that would have been so amazing to have like, I will say, I don't think we would have Andor without this show because I feel like that's maybe like the closest kind of current thing we have. Like, how amazing would that be to have like
Yeah.
Tony Gilroy just breaking down the commentary? I would have loved that.
Ah.
I
Mhm.
miss how we don't have that. If Battlestar were to be
Yeah.
going on right now, we would not know anything, and I know that there apparently it has been signed off again to redo. I can't remember who's going to be it's not Sam Ismail, but to be
Yeah,
like the
I know
showrunner and whatnot.
they've gone through a bunch of different
Right. But it's going to be handled
people
so
for the
differently.
years. Yeah.
I'm like,
Which
we'll
is
see the
kind of dumb.
Cylon. What?
Just do, which is kind of dumb. Like, you don't
Yeah.
even have to canonize or keep Blood and Chrome in canon. Just why would you not just do the easy thing and do a first Cylon War show?
Yeah, I know,
Exactly.
It's
right?
just
Do a
too easy.
prequel.
Yeah. Like, I
Yeah.
know they tried to do Caprica, which is like, I watched the first season of it, and that's kind of cool and stuff, but it's like, no, like, uh in Razor, when we see the flashback of young Adama, like in his Viper, it's like, give me that show. I want that
Yep.
show. And like, you can do the whole, you can build up to the series proper, of like, of how the Cylons, kind of why the Cylons decide to leave and become human and stuff. You can do all that build up, but give me that show. Like, I want a first Cylon War show with young Adama, because
That requires more work, Ricky, because they want to take the characters that are already there and the name, because that's everything with television
yeah,
and film now,
yeah,
and just, you know, redo it because
yeah,
I
mhm,
mean, I don't know how it will work,
yeah.
but I totally agree with
One of
you.
the funny
You have
things
a
I
whole
remember,
sandbox.
yeah, One of the funny things I actually remember about Caprica, Nor, you might not know this. After Battlestar ended,
Mhm.
like a couple of years after, they made a prequel series called Caprica,
Oh,
which is set 50 years before Battle 50? Yes, 50 years before Battlestar. And it's about like how they made the Cylons, like how the first Cylons were made and stuff
oh,
like
okay.
that. And
Dama's dad is the
yeah,
main
yeah,
character,
Dama's
played
dad is the
Oh,
by,
main character,
I will
and
say, I mean, Isai Morales. You don't get like much better than
yeah,
I
that,
know,
but
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
So
and
so
yeah,
yeah, it wasn't bad. It's completely different from Battlestar, which I
yeah,
mean, it's trying to be its own thing. But I remember Ron Moore saying that Caprica was actually more expensive to make than Battlestar because,
Oh,
but like mostly because of their locations. They have to shoot outdoors. They have to shoot, like there's so many exterior events going on in Caprica, and like he's like, yeah, booking all those locations and doing these shoots like outdoors and stuff, and it's much more time consuming and expensive to book all that. Whereas, they like, unless it's for a special episode, like going to Kobol or going to the
right, or Caprica
the
or
yeah,
mhm,
yeah,
New
Caprica
Caprica.
or the Eye of Jupiter planet. um they shot on studios. Like
Hmm.
they
mhm.
built the sets and then they kept them up and they shot in studios. So, and it's like, compared to having to, book huge locations in Vancouver or Toronto or wherever, it's like,
Mhm.
he's like, yeah, it was much more expensive, which I always found interesting because it's not as flashy as Battlestar. There's no huge action, there's no set pieces with Vipers flying, destroying Cylon
Raptors,
Raiders,
yeah.
or going like, um Justin mentioned the hand of God going underneath the asteroid belt in a Star Wars reference. Like, so I always found that interesting.
That's so funny considering then, like, not long after, he probably would have started Outlander, and they
Yeah.
filmed so much of that outside, and I'm sure that budget
Yeah.
is just insane.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't
no,
think I
so
knew that. That's interesting.
Yeah, actually,
yeah,
I watched before Outlander before watching Battlestar Galactica, and then it's the same. Oh, it's
Yeah.
the same creator. So that's
yeah.
interesting. But
Music too.
yeah,
Yes,
Christoph Beck.
yes.
Yes, Bear. Oh my God, Bear McCreary.
Ray McCreary,
Holy
my bad.
crap, he's so good. I I bought the soundtrack to each season because they're so good. Like,
But he didn't do the miniseries because I noticed that.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
as
didn't, like, it
no,
Richard
seems,
Richard Gibbs.
yeah,
which, I
Richard
mean, he
Gibbs,
still
Richard
took
Gibb.
on a lot of that. But when I was rewatching, I was like, oh, his name's not on here. And
yeah,
upon looking, I was like, oh, they brought him in afterwards.
yeah,
And he really expanded it, of course.
hmm
But then, yeah, like with Justin saying, seeing like Richard Gibbs was like the main guy. Because that's, I mean, that music, whether it's, the opening theme or like Six's theme is just
hmm
like vital. I mean, that's something that just
Oh
kind of
yeah.
lives in your brain. Or like whenever Vipers are released,
yeah,
to using All Along the Watchtower and
Oh
yeah,
yeah. That was
just
yeah,
became its own thing. And then same
yeah,
with like Outlander too. I mean, Bear just really um creates banger
yeah,
material.
oh yeah. No,
yeah.
especially the
Like,
intro. The intro for each episode on Battlestar Galactica was really exciting to hear all these survivors, and
Hmm.
then the faster transition, and then you see all the
yeah, we
strangers
yeah
actual.
we had a rule when we were watching it, like, cover your, in fact, when my wife and I
Oh,
rewatch the
your
series,
eyes.
we still cover our eyes because we don't want to see, like, the
And
flashes of
explode.
like what's
Yeah.
going to be in the episode.
Again, they would not do that now. They're like, no, we're not going to show that. How,
Yeah,
I mean, I was shocked again because, like with 33, they're putting that in there and you're seeing Hilo on Caprica and you're seeing a six come and see him. And
yeah,
The fact that they did it kind of all through, towards the end of the show, gosh, that would just be like shocking nowadays to see
Mhm.
somebody want to get the approval from like a network executive to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it really is like, okay, so you bring up network. It really is surprising the number of things Battlestar got away with
Hmm.
for like a network show, because this was not like this
I mean,
wasn't
US cable, yeah, not
yeah,
broadcast,
yeah,
but
yeah. Yeah, like but like it wasn't the days where, there's like 50 different streaming services and like specialty programs and
Mhm.
stuff. So it's crazy that like they got to do so many heavy storylines and topics and stuff like, like obviously, like we've talked about, this starts with like a post 9/11 world, and like the imagery in the miniseries alone is very evocative of that. Like when when Hilo and Boomer are floating down to Caprica, and you're seeing the bombs go off and all the
mhm,
smoke pillars, it's very reminiscent of like looking at satellite photos of Earth on 9/11 and seeing like the smoke pillars, like even from that far. Um, or doing like the occupation on New Caprica and doing like, oh yeah, we're
mhm.
gonna have the heroes be suicide bombers. We're
Yep,
gonna have
yep,
them
yep.
go that route. Or like, and one of the most shocking ones to me too is like in season two, like so many shows, even now, they avoid the topic of abortion. They avoid it because
Yes.
it's such a huge like flashpoint of
Mhm.
controversy, like no matter which opinion you take in the episode. So it's so surprising to me that like they tackled that issue in I forget which episode it was, or what the name was, but in that episode, but then they do it in the setting of a post-apocalyptic world where Sam, like you mentioned that baby comment, Adama says like, you told me when this all began that we have to go start making babies, and like that number doesn't go very high, or doesn't go high very often.
Hmm.
Um, and so to like look at it through that lens of like humanity's survival, like that's still such a huge risk to take, like even in that
Yeah.
setting, like not
The
talking about
stem
in a
cell kind of aspect too,
yeah.
with
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hera saving Rosalind as well. And then, I mean, they have the black market episode, not one of the stronger ones in
Yeah.
my opinion, but and then yeah, the occupation. And then, yeah, I mean, I kind of get Clone Wars vibes in a way, actually, like what
Mhm.
George was able to do on the Clone Wars.
Mhm.
Um, you know, into that kind of storytelling. It's probably, and when did Clone Wars, was it 2009 when the movie came out?
2008,
Eight.
It's
Eight.
almost,
Right?
I wonder how much that
oh no,
kind
maybe it
of,
was 9 actually. Yeah, I think it was 9.
how much Battlestar kind of influenced that. Because
Mhm.
especially in those latter season of Clone Wars, I mean, he gets to some, they do, like with Saw Gerrera, the guerrilla warfare, they
Mhm.
have like the stuff with Asajj Ventress and the child brides. I feel
Mhm.
like, you had a little bit again of everybody is now, you have kind of like your serials in the 40s, like your Flash Gordons and Buck Rogers that get you to your stuff in the 60s with Trek, which gets you to
Mhm.
your Star Wars, which then gets you back to like your reboots of things, and then
Yeah.
Battlestar Galactica, and then we bring them back out. And I'd be curious if
The
George would
circle
have
is now
been,
complete.
yeah, if he would have been influenced by any of that, and then we're
Mhm.
now getting another reboot. But thankfully, another season of Andor. So, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so like yeah, we've talked a lot about, what we've loved about the series, and just like what's kind of since the mini series was our entry point, like what was it, was there anything specific about the mini series that made you say like I want to keep going. I wanted to see more of this world. I like was there anything specific, or was it just like all of it in general?
For me, it was honestly just the fact that I kept thinking about everything that I had seen. That's actually the biggest way that I know I liked something. Like you can watch something and like, oh, that was cool, and then forget about it or just take it and leave it.
Mm.
Everything that I saw in the miniseries had me thinking about either things that were going on in my life or things that were going on in the world at the time, and then coming back to the characters. So, I mean, I guess when you connect with characters on that kind of level,
Mm.
you want to see more of it. So, like, that's what, like I said, the next Friday is when 33 actually aired on Sci-Fi, and I was like, "Yep, I'm right there watching it."
Mhm.
Hey, that's perfect. No, in my case, I think that like I agree with Justin on the way you connect with the characters and the storyline, the way that we already told this position, that all the story and the characters. But I think it was, of course, I went there because Katie Sackhoff is there. But hey, there has been instances back then. For example, as I love Adam Driver, but I haven't seen. I refuse to watch Girls. But yeah, I mean, not because
Same.
you're a fan of a certain actor, it means you're gonna watch everything. But I felt like, yeah, I felt like Peter, like, yeah, next, let me watch
Mhm.
the season one. So yeah, definitely agree with Justin on that.
Mhm.
I think mine's the same thing because I went kind of backwards, watching kind of the some of the stuff in season two, maybe starting with like the farm, to get
Oh,
to like
that's a
to get up
heavy
to.
episode to begin.
I write another episode talking about like forcibly, possibly taking women's ovaries and stuff,
Yeah.
to going up to resurrection ship. But I think, um, and then kind of working my way back. But again, it's about taking a story that is so well done. And in the service of that, you are supporting these characters. And for me, like Starbuck and Katie were just a big, strong thing that got me in there. And along with seeing Edward and Mary and Jamie. And so when I went back, it just kind of confirmed everything that I had watched that had come after. Um,
Mhm.
Along with surprising me in certain ways. Like, so that was strange too, to see like those bits of season two, but then at the end of season one, Adama is shot. And it's just like, again, that's a huge deal. I mean, I don't know if they had been renewed for other seasons, when they had like those 2 season cliffhangers.
Mhm.
But I mean, I know I had to wait between season two and three, but I just can't imagine. That feels like it would be very much like a Star Trek best of both worlds situation. And you're like, how do you sit here and wait a whole
Yeah.
summer for all of this?
Yeah. I know when when we finished watching the first season DVD, the season 2 DVD was already out, but
Hmm.
I had to go away for like a couple weeks on a trip, I think. And like I made like I was like, oh my God, like, oh, I want to watch it now, but we leave like tomorrow and stuff. Like, but I made a point to finish season 1 with them like the night before I left, and was just like, you guys cannot watch season 2 until I get back. And I know, like, bless them because they actually held it in and like
Oh,
did not
wow.
watch until I got back, just so we could all have that experience together of like how does this cliffhanger resolve? Um,
The
and
crazy thing about Adama getting shot that I remember is the first season had already aired in the UK by the time Sci-Fi ran
That's
it
right.
in
Yes, I
January.
forgot
And
that.
Really?
like I had no idea, like no one that I talked to who watched the show, which admittedly back then was not a lot of people, but no one knew what was happening. So one, like Sam said a couple of times, there's no way that they would allow that kind of stuff to happen today.
No.
Um,
Hmm.
and two, just
No,
the fact that
especially
even
with
with the internet, you didn't know that he got shot at the end, it like still astounds me that I that wasn't spoiled to me to this day.
Yeah.
I can't believe it wasn't. That is wild. I
Yeah,
could
no,
The
see
I
entire
maybe
the
something
entirety of
else,
it.
but I
I
mean, that is
forgot about
such a
that.
big moment. Like, I mean, she just shoots them like right in the belly, and holy crud.
Yeah.
That's that's amazing. I didn't realize it had aired there. So how much earlier was it, Justin, that it had
I think
aired?
it was a few months.
So yeah, it was definitely a few months because it came on. I think it was like the
Wow.
first Friday in
Serious, yeah.
January is when it was in the US, but the entire
Yes.
season had aired the year before in the UK.
Dang. Okay. I always wondered about that because, between the mini series and then the first season, the mini series was like December 2003. And then the first season didn't start on sci-fi until January of 2005. Um, thinking about
Yeah.
kind of like that delay in a sense. So obviously it was
Yeah.
much shorter in the UK.
So
Okay.
yeah, the UK it says premiered October 2004, and then
Okay. Couple months. Okay.
broadcast on Sci-Fi starting January 2005. So
Okay.
not that long of a gap, but like still, if that happened
Still,
today, that would be
For that
everywhere.
show, yeah.
Yeah.
that would immediately be on Twitter, like Adama
Yeah.
shot.
Of
Just like
course,
that's the
yeah.
two words that it would say. And then Edward James Olmos would be trending with
Yep.
it,
Mhm.
in Grace Park. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. Gosh. Like that'd be like imagine Game of Thrones premiering like that first season premiering somewhere else 2 months beforehand, and like
No,
somehow
now it's not
somehow
possible.
keeping the Eddard Stark death like
Yeah. Or
secret.
even just like Bran, ending the
Yeah.
pilot, being pushed out the
Hmm.
window.
Oh yeah.
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 That'd be crazy. Gosh.
Again, that's where I'm very, and I'm not sure what network this new show, if it ever gets off the ground, will air on. I don't know if it's going to be more of like a cable, like sci-fi, or if it
Mhm.
would be like an NBC thing, but you're going to have obviously very different parameters based for that.
Yeah.
Just again, I feel like if you're going to do it, you would have to at least do it on some kind of cable one.
Yeah.
And unless there's so few shows that I think on broadcast that maybe like the show Evil, and even that's I don't even know if that airs on CBS anymore. That are allowed to have kind of that leeway with a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff, that Battlestar
Yeah. I
did.
remember way back, I think it was CBS. They tried doing an experiment of like showing Dexter on broadcast, but like heavily censored,
Do that.
and like this only lasted like I don't think it even lasted a month because like how
Every
can
line of Deb's would have to be bleeped. Every line.
yeah, like they and like Dokes calls Dexter like
Oh
his
yeah, it
first
dokes.
line is
Yeah.
like, hey motherfucker, and like
I miss
that's
Stokes.
that's his first line, and it's like they censored it to like something else. It's like how can you do that? Like
I had no
so
idea that they tried that. I mean, I know like they're trying to do, or they're showing on ABC right now, like only murders. And I'm like, you're still
mhm,
gonna have to take language out of there as well. But that is
yeah,
hilarious. Why would you
yeah.
pick Dexter?
Like
Yeah.
language is one thing because like you can get away with like a
Yes.
dub or whatever, but like just the subject matter of something like Dexter or Sopranos, like trying to get those on broadcast TV, like I'm still surprised, different show. I'm still surprised Hannibal aired on NBC
Yes, that's the other one that I was
for
trying to think
what
of was
for
Hannibal,
what
yeah.
Hannibal.
it got away with. Like that show's insane. And Brian Fuller has a very funny story of like talking to like the executives about censoring something because like two of the victims are naked, and the video shows their butts, and he like sarcastically said, well, I mean, we could always just cover their butts up with fake blood, and that'll be no nudity then. And the execs were like, brilliant, do that. And that what?
That's so much worse. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, so yeah, just the fact that even then like Battlestar got away with the stuff that they did before CBS and other shows tried experimenting with like Dexter on regular broadcasts. It still astounds me, some of this stuff, just because it's not typical happy-go-lucky sci-fi. Like it's so much more like serious and darker, but as we've all said, it's also so optimistic and full of heart.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that brings me up to one character we have not mentioned in the show yet, and that is the old gal herself, the
Oh.
Galactica. Because I love that this show treats kind of the same way that like Star Trek treats the Enterprise as like
Hmm.
a actual character. Like this show also treats the Galactica as like, not just a ship, but like, a
She's
person.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I just love that aspect about that they were able to like bring that sense of home, like you said, Sam, and just like honor and decency to just this ship and its history. Yeah. So yeah, I think we covered like all the bases pretty much, unless there's anything else you guys wanted to add. But obviously we love this show. Cannot believe it's been 20 years since it aired, or like first began with the miniseries. But it's also awesome that even at that age, it's still able to resonate and be relevant with new viewers like Noor. Because it's a pretty like timeless show, I think, even for one being made at like such a specific
Mm-hmm.
point in time in both the television landscape, but also like pop culture and the things society was going through then. Like it's such a thing that can still be relatable, like no matter when you watch it or how you watch it.
Agree. And even I remember when I started watching the series, people was like, "Well, just don't be too uh, harsh on the CGI effects because yeah, it is almost 20 years ago." But like I felt like they hold okay. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
and
Like,
when you have, like you said, good storyline, good acting, the characters, all that content, yeah, that's minimal. That's something you don't even pay attention that much.
Mm.
you
What were
can't.
you
How
gonna
can you
say?
say that the just the effects are dated? Just show them Exodus Part Two. I mean, like that's all you need to
Oh
see to just be quiet.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Like, yeah, that talk about jaw like dropping moment. Like I mentioned my friends, we once we caught up, we always made a point to meet week to week to watch the new episode. And that one was just, oh my God. Like we were all just like, how is this television? Like what are we watching? This is like something we'd see on the big screen. And
Mm-hmm.
even just like even just the moments of like non-action with CGI, but like the miniseries begins with two Cylons walking in
Mm-hmm.
and they look so good. Like even now today, like they still look so good just walking in and standing there, standing like sentry to like at the door. Like
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong about them. And even the later episodes when you see them in action, like the one shot that I always kind of think of is one of the first that I think of when I think of those Silent Centurions. And it's played like a horror movie moment, but it's when they board the Galactica and like Lee and the other pilots are like talking like just as if nothing's wrong, as if they didn't just come back from blowing up Cylon ships, and they turn the corner and there's one there, and it immediately like claws out, slashes guy's chest, and it's like, holy crap. Like that effect even just looks good. And they made them really look like, um effective, like towering killing machines.
Yeah, there's one shot in that episode, Valley of Darkness, where the Cylons doing the run at
Yeah.
the machinery that's behind everyone, and they do that last stand, and he jumps up in the air, and like that explosive round comes up and
Yeah.
blows the head up as it tumbles forward. Like those effects are amazing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Again, yeah, I was surprised at how well they held up. Like I was really afraid it was going to look dated. And you can tell that it was shot 20 years ago, but it again, I don't think it seems dated and it seems
Hmm.
older, but it's not like there's a negative to that,
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
was just really impressed with what I was seeing with like the Viper stuff and the Raptors and
Yeah.
everything else going
Yeah.
on.
And like how they applied like obviously not like real physics in space, but like this is not like, Star Wars where, they can do basically anything, but it's like no, they have to account for like things like no gravity and spin and like even like when they do the exterior shots of the ship and the sounds are muffled from like
Mhm.
their guns and stuff like that's just so cool too because it's not like Star Trek and Star Wars where you hear the lasers and hear the explosions. No, everything is like muffled. That's so cool, and you would expect the opposite from a sci-fi show just because of Star Wars, Star Trek, and even the original Battlestar series.
I think it's like with what you said, probably shooting more on sound stages just really
Mm,
gave them, it seemed like their budget was spent very economically in terms of like they're bringing in good people
mm,
but also putting it towards their effects and their costumes and
yeah.
everything else.
That actually reminds me of their inside joke of like why their dog tags and their papers have no corners. It's
Oh,
because
right.
they cut corners in their
Yeah.
budget
Cut
to like
corners.
get this made.
But I kept focusing on the paper again. I love that little detail of it.
Mm,
Because I was looking at the papers again and being like, oh, right, there's no corners. And that just makes it feel like something just very specific to that world, but
hmm.
understandable. But it also identifies it. I see that. I know I'm looking at Battlestar
Yeah.
Galactica.
Hmm. Or even like substituting the F word with frack. Like
Right.
that is so.
I still say frag.
Yeah, I put it's still in my vocabulary, like frack,
Mhm.
and it's funny. I was did an interview with Katie Sackhoff a couple years ago, and I mentioned, or well, um, it was for like she had a small role in the animated adaptation of Night of the Living Dead. So I was interviewing her about that, but like they were like, since it's such a small role, like you can talk to her about, other projects as long as it's not Star Wars. They kept Star Wars off the table. They were like, you can talk to her about anything else except Star Wars. But yeah, in one of her answers, she like swore a couple times and she was like, that's my third time swearing. I'm sorry. I apologize. And I was like, you could always say frack. And the way she did that Starbuck giggle laugh, like number one, I was like, oh my God, I'm hearing that laugh like live. And then she's like, oh yeah, it's true. I could say that. It's been too long though. It doesn't roll off the tongue as easily as it did. But it's like still such a cool little thing they did there. And every now and then as well, if you like if you watch like some of their mouths closely, like you can see them kind of saying fuck instead, but like
Oh, yeah.
and they dub it with frack and they just kept the blooper in because it's funny. Like I remember seeing Doc Coddle. I think it's when he's giving Baltar the brain scan and like Baltar screws it up and like he's like frack, but the faraway shot of Coddle is like he's clearly saying fuck and like he knows he's screwed up, but they just kept it in.
Who says it first again? Is it Callie or does who says frack?
That's a
I feel
good
like it might be
trivia.
one. Somebody says, I think, um, when Adam is approaching them, someone in the group with Prosna, Callie, and is it Jammer? But one of them's like, "Oh, frag, it's him," or something like that, and he
Okay.
walks up.
Yeah.
They give him a
Yeah.
picture.
Or is Callie the first one who says mother fracker? Like,
Oh
it
yeah,
might be.
she's
does
definitely
she
the
say
person who
that in
says, yeah,
Bastille Day during? Okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because
she
it's like
says
that was,
mother fracker,
yeah, and
because
I
that's
feel
the
like that
first
was
time that
one
they
of,
use it in that
yeah, because
context.
you're like,
But
oh, that's the person who's saying it,
yeah.
yeah,
during that scene. That's what I'm
yeah,
thinking of is Mother Fracker.
yeah, but yeah,
That's a
no,
great scene.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
I forget. That's a good trivia question, actually. But yeah, it's definitely what Justin said when
Yeah, I'm trying to, I'm like
Prosner,
racking my brain now.
when Prosner, Callie, and yeah, I think Jam. It wasn't Tyrell, but
It wasn't,
Jammer.
no.
Yeah, when I think it's when the three of them they hide the picture from Adama. Then, oh, you know what? I think what it is. One of them says like it's like, oh no, it's him, or they might say, oh frack, it's him. But then when I think it's Jammer who says like oh, the
Yeah.
Galactica shouldn't be turned into a fracking museum. Oh, sorry, sir.
Oh,
And then Adama's kind of just agrees with it. He's like, well, yeah, no, it's true. But I think that yeah, it's either like the oh frack, he's here, or like it shouldn't be turned into a fracking museum. One
Mhm.
of those times is the first utterance of frack, and
and
I
that's like
remember,
way at the beginning.
yeah, I remember like it took a while to get used to because it
Yes.
stood out, but then like it did not take long for us to start saying like it in regular conversation, like frack. Or I also still every now and then, like, or not every now and then, but I also still go like by the gods. Like,
Oh yeah.
especially like the way Ty says it. He says it so well. Like,
He drags it. It's a my God. Yeah.
yeah, that might be the Canadian accent in him too, because like
Yeah.
he says Gata very in a very heavy Canadian accent. So
I
Yeah, they don't know
noticed
whether to say Gator or Gaida at first.
yeah,
they all,
Gator.
I noticed in like the mini series, they were all saying Gaida instead of Gata. And
yeah,
I feel like later it is definitely Gata.
yeah,
And I
Yeah.
just think that's one of those other characters that just he got to have such a
yeah,
what if, you know, I mean just what a storyline to be able to give that character,
yeah, yeah.
starting and
Well,
then ending.
I always like the little bits because like every time you see him, he's so like professional and proper,
Mm-hmm.
but like the little bits you see of him where he like lets down that side a bit, like when
Mm-hmm.
he's giving the interview to Deanna and he's like, yeah, I got tattoo, take ambrosia and it doesn't hurt much. Or when the Pegasus people are giving them like all the data that they lost, he's like, you got any porn on there? Those little bits are like so again, it goes back to your comment, Justin, about just how humanizing they all are. Because like, because yeah, like he keeps himself up to this level so much that when
He
like
does.
the moments that you see when he's able to like let loose a little bit, it's like so funny.
And then sing. Fun trivia fact, if you have seen any of the Barbie movies, he's like the voice of like Ken and he sings. And I
Really?
mean, but
Oh,
he
I
has
didn't know
such a
that.
phenomenal singing voice. And I loved
Yeah.
that they introduced parts of that into there too.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
because he's just such a beautiful,
Mm,
beautiful singer. I
yeah.
mean, I feel like they introduced a lot of different things, with the various actors involved. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely did a lot of like yeah, like each one was able to bring like part of their own like aspect to the of themselves into the character and make it like
mhm,
a pretty big part of themselves. And like again with Hilo, like guy who was meant to die in the miniseries and became such a huge part of the show. Like I can't imagine it without Tom Pickett. And like he made like the fact that he made such an impression, was able to like put himself like part of himself into that role too. Like it's so
And I know
good.
with Nikki Klein as Callie, they did not have as much planned for her. And then in that third episode, Bastille Day, they were like, shoot, we need to use her. And we don't know how to use Boxy. And then you get
Yeah,
like with
Boxy kind of quietly
he quietly went away.
goes away.
And then like with Starbuck, I mean, it was originally, I think, supposed to be a woman maybe in like her 30s or even early 40s. And like Katie came in and she was like 21. And it was like, this is the person. I know she was supposed to be a bit older though, with what they were looking at.
Yeah.
And she just came in and just blew him away.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. There's just so many cool aspects of the show, like right from the miniseries all the way to the end. And we mentioned like the like some of the guest stars like they have like Michelle Forbes and oh gosh, I'm blanking on the guy who plays the lawyer, Baltar's lawyer.
Oh, Romo
What's his
Lampkin, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'm blanking.
What's his
I'm
name? Who's on
blanking on
everything?
his yeah, blanking on his
Mark
name.
Shepard.
Yes, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
like
His
James
his dad is
Remar.
one of the best character actors of all time. W. Morgan Shepard. Love it.
Yeah.
And then like Lucy Lawless and
Yeah.
Dean Stockwell and
Yeah, whenever they get these actors in there, like either for a supporting role or what, like there's now I'm forgetting his name, but it's a Canadian. He plays President Adar in the flashbacks.
Oh,
oh
Colin Fior.
Yes.
oh
Yes.
yeah.
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 Like when he's in that, like that's so good. Like I was just like, oh, it's Colin Fior. Yeah. So yeah, like they just got so many cool people in this who gave it their all for whatever little bits. And yeah, it's just such a magnificent show. And like one that like laid a lot of the groundwork for I think a lot of the TV series we see today. Because like I know like it's common to say like, oh, without the Sopranos there wouldn't be this, or without Breaking Bad there wouldn't be this. But like in between those was Battlestar Galactica doing a lot of the things that the TV series are doing now. And like it's yeah, without that, like even so like I don't know if any of you watch The Expanse, but so much of The Expanse owes it to Battlestar because it's very similar in what how they do things and like their themes and stuff. But like yeah, Battlestar really like set the blueprint for a lot of the shows that we see, I think.
Again, I don't think we would have Andor without it because
Yeah.
to have that type of storytelling, the fact that again, I'm still shocked. I mean, I am and I'm not because it's Tony Gilroy, but
Yeah.
to allow that storytelling, to really be like, we're going to take this time to let you do this, and then how your characters push it forward. And just like you said, I mean, you have those shows that you mentioned, in Battlestar was definitely in there in between. I think just kind of silently pushing these things that we just don't realize.
For sure. Well, thank you guys for joining me and talking about this awesome show. Where can people find you on Twitter or other things? Yeah, let's start with you, Justin.
That's a weird question to ask now because social media is just like a hellscape and a clusterfrack. I'm, I'm I am on Twitter, Twitter and Instagram at justinmbolger.com. That's JUSTINMBOLGER. Though again, what is social media these days? Who knows?
Sam, how about you?
I'm kind of like with Justin. I'm on quite a few things, but it's such a state of chaos, I feel like. I would say if you want to find me, I'm on Twitter. I'm like, I had to look it up. I'm like, what is my name again on Twitter? It's Sam, SAM, Die, DYEK. You can also, can I tell people to watch something, Ricky?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
You can also catch me in Pain Hustlers on Netflix with Chris Evans and Emily Blunt.
And Noor, how about you?
Okay, you can all find me on Twitter at Noorhal, Noorhal. I have a link tree on my bio with different links and pursuits, different sites. Instagram is at Noorhal Music. So yeah, you can check me out there.
I'm glad you mentioned the music because I was going to ask when you're dropping your next Taylor Swift album cover.
Oh, soon, definitely. I've been delayed because I've been trying to cover, but then I get like lately I've been listening to 80s music and such.
Oh,
So
nice.
definitely, yeah,
Nice.
soon definitely bringing some more Taylor Swift covers.
What 80s music have you been listening to?
I actually posted today a bit of Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper, and
Yeah.
before I was like the last week I was listening to Africa by Toto. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, some really good
Cool.
bangers from the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at Richard Church 16 and on this YouTube channel, Tricky Entertainment. So thank you again, guys. And if you haven't watched Battlestar, I mean, why would you be watching this if you haven't? But tell your friends about it. 20 years. And so say we all.
So say we all.
So say we all.
Not about 20 years, no.
Yeah, not about
Yeah,
that.
not about that. Not about that.
Yeah, wait till 20 more years and then we'll be, so say we all at 40. All right, thanks again, guys.